Zoom call is a poor replica of that, and hopefully we can get back to doing that in person soon. This is just one of several in a series. We got this tour today, but also looking at a Mid-Atlantic biodiesel tour and also a California. And hopefully if things continue to improve, we can do those in person. So with that, I would like to introduce our first presenter. Wait 1 minute. Colin Heiler, are you on board?
I am here.
Hey, Colin. Colin's on our National Biodiesel Foundation. I'd like to say a quick welcome.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, Tom, and everybody for coordinating and being here today. On behalf of the board and the foundation, we welcome these opportunities to share more about the great work that folks are doing in the field with biodiesel and how the support that each and every one of you provide to the foundation goes to helping to both further education, outreach, and research for the biodiesel industry. So glad that everybody could be here today. I know we're a year plus in and folks are zoomed out, but as Tom mentioned, looking forward to putting together some additional tours later this year, and hopefully we'll see some in-person activity. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Colin. With that, I want to open it up with our first speaker, Paul Winters, Director of Public Affairs and Federal Communications in the National Biodiesel Board's office in DC. I'm located right in the middle of Missouri, but we do have an office in Washington, DC, where Paul works out of. He's going to give you an overview of biodiesel, and then we'll go from there. Over to you, Paul.
Well, thanks, Tom. I'm going to share my slides right now and just give you a little bit of background on the industry. Right here, you see a map of basically the top 12 states that produce biodiesel and the top 12 states that have the largest markets for biodiesel and renewable diesel. And as you can see, many of those states are one and the same. The states that produce biodiesel generally have large markets for the product. Some states you might not think of as top biodiesel producers. Texas is actually the second largest producer of biodiesel in the United States, and it's the #1 market in the United States for biodiesel. Louisiana is the #1 producer of renewable diesel, whereas California is the top market for renewable diesel and biodiesel combined. Overall, there's more than 100 producers across the United States today. There's been consistently 2.5 billion gallons of annual production here in the United States over the past several years. And the market overall is a 3 billion gallon market. So you can get a sense of how much is produced here in the United States and how much is imported. That doesn't reflect how much biodiesel is exported. The United States actually has a favorable trade balance with Canada. We export more biodiesel to Canada than we import from them. Overall, that supports 65,000 jobs here in the United States and 17 billion in economic activity. That study is a couple years old. If it fully reflected the 3 billion gallon market today, those jobs would be somewhere closer to 79,000, and the economic activity would be more than 20 billion. Our industry's vision is to double production and double the size of the US market to 6 billion gallons over the next decade. And if you look at the policies that exist and the announcements that have been made for increased production, expanded production, oil refiners that are switching over to renewable production, you can easily see that if even a portion of those announcements come true, we're going to be at 6 billion gallons. There are also new markets opening up for sustainable aviation fuel and marine applications. So I mentioned biodiesel and renewable diesel. I just want to emphasize that these are two different products, although they're part of the same industry. There's a little more similarity than there are differences, but they are different products, they're different molecules, and they meet different international standards. A lot of the work that the Biodiesel Board has done in its 30 years of existence has been to set these standards and to ensure that when somebody produces biodiesel and when a engine manufacturer approves use of biodiesel for its products, we're all agreed on what the standards for production are, and that our industry is producing a quality product. So both biodiesel and renewable diesel are drop-in diesel replacements. They can be used at different blend levels, but they can also be used in any existing diesel engine or diesel application without modifying that engine. They're both made from renewable fats, oils, and greases, and they are essentially better fuels. Both have higher cetane ratings than traditional petroleum diesel, which means that they burn more completely and deliver all of the energy contained in the product. They burn cleaner, so there's less carbon emission and there are fewer criteria pollutant emissions from the tailpipe of a diesel engine. So you're going to hear a little later from Tim Keaveney at Hero BX to describe the process of making biodiesel. But I will talk a little bit more about what biodiesel is made from. We use renewable fats, oils, and greases, as I said. About half of that is from soybean oil. This is surplus soybean oil, essentially. Our industry got started 30 years ago when demand for animal feed was increasing. Soybeans are probably the most efficient high protein animal feed out there. But they are made up of 20% oil, and the soybean industry needed something to do with that surplus oil. It was essentially being stored in tanks and going rancid, and farmers were having to find ways to dispose of it. So biodiesel is a good use for that surplus. About a third of what is currently available in the US market goes to biodiesel. There's still a large percentage of what is produced that goes into food preparation and various food products. But biodiesel now supports about 13% of a bushel of soybean, the price of a bushel of soybeans. Over time, we've developed a market for used cooking oil that keeps used cooking oil and recycled animal fats out of landfills. And as ethanol production increased over the past decade and a half, ethanol producers started to extract corn oil from that product. It makes their remaining animal feed higher quality, higher protein, and it produces additional value for that corn oil product. So that is now maybe 15% of the overall industry for us. And that's where our environmental benefits come from. We are low carbon because we are using surplus oils and fats that would otherwise go to waste. Some of our facilities have carbon intensity values that are 88 to 91% lower than petroleum diesel. So we are approaching a carbon neutral status. There's also fewer criteria pollutants that come from diesel engines when they use biodiesel and renewable diesel. Hydrocarbons are reduced by half. Particulate matter, the smoke that comes out of the diesel exhaust pipe, is reduced significantly, as well as some other aromatics, and that leads to health benefits. So biodiesel is one of the primary tools in being used by clean city coalitions and cities like New York to reduce all of these pollutants and to create some benefits for citizens and some of the health benefits. We're going to be talking a lot over the next couple of years about the savings that come from reducing these health risks and reducing the health risks from petroleum biodiesel use. But you'll hear a great deal more of that from Keith Kerman. So I will stop there and turn it back over to Tom to introduce Keith.
Thank you, Paul. It's my pleasure to introduce a very good friend of ours, Keith Kerman, New York City Deputy Commissioner and Fleet Administrator. New York, as you know, has the largest metropolitan fleet in the country and over 10,000 diesel vehicles. And Keith has been working very hard to get as much biodiesel, renewable diesel in that fleet as possibly can, and also throughout bioheat throughout the building. So he has been such a pleasure to work with, and he's actually pushes us to do more biodiesel, which is a wonderful dynamic. So I'll throw it over to you, Keith. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom and Paul, and good to see Rocco and everyone else. I can only see the people, Colin, whoever comes up on my screen in our new Zoom world. You showed the video, and of course the video was at our fleet show, which we had run for 31 straight years until last year. I had managed 25 years of it. And you know, we had a hope to run the fleet show in May. That will not happen. You know, we had to make a call. So we reserved a date in September to do the fleet show. That still would be optimistic. You know, New York is, you know, we're vaccinating, which is great. And I've actually gotten my second dose, which is great. But the number's still fairly high in New York. You know, there's still 8,000 cases today, which isn't that far off where we were when this all began back in March and April. So mixed bag, but we actually are thinking of doing an online fleet show. So that's my endorsement of the fleet show. And I'm going to get to my slides, but since Tom said that I always push you, I do want to say, just for whoever is listening, I've always thought that the route you might think about is to try and do what ethanol did and become 5 or 10% of the standard commercial diesel blend in the country. You know, ethanol is the role model. Minnesota is the role model. And one of the interesting things, well, I'm going to talk about the great stuff we're trying to do on the fleet side. You know, there's very little commercial biodiesel use in New York State because there's almost no, if not no, retail biodiesel available. And we were asked to look at things like school buses and expanding bio use among commercial fleets. And the problem is you can't, they can use it, but they can't get it. So I always thought that's something to take a look at. There's a clear model for it, both statewide and federally, and it would solve an issue for us if we want to increase biodiesel use among commercial fleets, and there are way more commercial vehicles than city vehicles. That would be a route to do it. So that's my unsolicited editorial, and now I'm going to share my screen, and I will go through where we are. And we last talked in December. So some of this will be familiar if you were on those calls, but I'll give you where we are now. Actually, we have about 13,500 diesel fleet units. I think the other number is the on-road, but of course we operate thousands of off-road diesel equipment pieces, and those off-road diesel equipment pieces, from agricultural tractors to backhoes to generators, all use biodiesel blends as well. The only place where we have some hesitance still is on some of the DOT street maintaining equipment. But more or less our whole off-road fleet is all using biodiesel, as well as the on-road fleet. So of course our core policy is the NYC Clean Fleet Policy. And this was announced by Mayor de Blasio in 2015. And our goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which I normally just tell everybody is fossil fuel. It's not exactly, but I try and keep it simple. By 50% by 2025, so 4 years from now, and then 80% by 2035. We are pursuing electrification and hybrid pursuits as aggressively as we can. And we have a kind of three-part policy. It's electrify where you can, it's hybrid and efficiency where you can. And one of the biggest things we did recently is all our police cars are now going to be hybrids. Last year was the first year that every vehicle we bought on the police side, response vehicle, sedan, SUV, and van, were all hybrids. And then renewable fuels and biofuels. So that's our three-part plan: electrify, efficiency through hybrids and other efficiencies also, and then renewable fuels. In the short term, renewable fuels is how we get to 2020, to this 50 by 2025. In the longer term, there'll be a lot more electrification. But in the shorter term, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen through renewable fuels. One thing I also want to mention that was announced last year is that while we do these kind of events and promotions and we talk to everybody we can nationally and internationally, we had never been charged to do that, actually formally. We are a municipal, we're a town fleet. So there's always been this question of why do we go travel the world and do this stuff? So actually in February of 2020, Mayor de Blasio signed an executive order, and including it is formally charging the Department of Citywide Administrative Services, my agency, with promoting safe and sustainable fleet alternatives throughout the country. And so that is now actually a job of ours, to go promote and expand these markets. And the theory behind that is, of course, that New York alone cannot change the design of vehicles or the manufacture of fuels unless there is broad support, broad interest in these approaches, where we can be an aggressive customer, but you have to have a marketplace. So pushing these things is now part of our formal charge. Of course, in New York City, biodiesel is legislated. There are three core laws. There's a law that governs the city fleet. There's the law that governs city-owned buildings, all of which we are more than compliant with. We're above compliance. And then there's the big one, the heating oil bill that governs all buildings, public and private. And of course, we're getting closer to 2025, where B10 will be required of all buildings, public and private, in New York City. We are almost there. I'll show you that in a minute. City government buildings are almost at B10, and now starting to think about the next stage. But soon, all public buildings and private buildings, all commercial and residential buildings, will have to do the same. So one thing, Paul talked a little bit about the air quality benefits. I will tell you that, we are in a mayoral year, we're in an election year, and there's going to be a change of administration. There's a term limit for Mayor de Blasio, so we will have a new mayor. And environmental issues are clearly at the forefront of discussion, as are air quality issues. So there's kind of the two-part aspect of greenhouse gases, and we all know that there's enormous benefit on the greenhouse gas side. But there is this question and concerns, that there are concerns about the air quality side, right? And there are some who are advocating just get rid of fuels, right? We don't want to hear about new fuels, we just want to hear about zero emission. And that is part of the political discussion. We've been arguing that, look, we agree, wherever we can electrify and be efficient, we're going to do that and do it as quickly as we can. But I remind everyone there's an enormous, absolutely enormous amount of existing infrastructure on the heating oil market side, on the vehicle side, on the off-road side, that uses diesel fuel and is going to use diesel fuel for years and years to come. And so we've tried to partner these approaches and not have them be in contention with each other. And interesting, the politics of our country, there's one side that says electrification is somehow, we should treat it as the enemy. And there's another side that says biodiesel, we should treat it that way as well. So we're trying to say we should be working together in all these different approaches to get sustainable, domestic, cleaner fuels and pursue this together, electrification, efficiency, and biofuels, working together, moving forward together. Because the alternative is we all kind of get less benefit and we all fight with each other. So, but there's a lot, but the issue on biofuels is the air quality. One thing that we've seen is that the renewable diesel could be even more an effective argument than the biodiesel. So that could be even more reason that we pursue renewable diesel in fleet and in heating oil. But of course, biodiesel is still a major part of what we do. Speaking of which, so we won't update these charts. So those of you who heard me back in December, we don't update till the end of the fiscal year. Our fiscal year ends on June 30th. But we are obviously an enormous user of biodiesel blends in both buildings and heat. We're certainly well north of 350 billion gallons in just the last 8 years. In fact, we've been using biofuels going back to 2005 in the Parks Department, where I was. So we're just a huge user in every building. It's biofuel. BioHeat is in every building in New York City, and biodiesel is in every vehicle. So that continues. And some of the up and downs, you'll see the building number is a little up and down. And that's because of how cold it might be. And the fleet number generally goes up, but we did use less fleet during the COVID year last year. And that had nothing to do with biodiesel policy, but it had to do with some of the changes and restrictions. There were months that the Department of Transportation, for example, was more or less not operating at the out on the truck side. One thing I do want to mention, and I've mentioned before, that while our law does not govern emergency services, police, fire, and the Department of Correction are exempt from the law. They are all big users of biofuels. And we have almost complete use of biofuels among emergency services, which has really been a great accomplishment. And that's all been done voluntarily. They could have told me, well, the law exempts us and that's the way it is. And none of them did. And they have been equal and full partners in what we've been doing. We are trying to expand on the biodiesel side. So we hope to have B50. We're very close. We've been doing this B50 project. For those of you who know New York, trying to certify at the regulatory level a new fuel is a fascinating challenge. We've gone through the fire department, the State Department of Environmental Conservation, the federal EPA. We are done. We have an MOU, a consent order. We just need to bid a small contract and get a supplier. And we're ready to go this summer with B50 in Staten Island Parks. Staten Island Parks is the place we want to start because that's where we started with biodiesel. In fact, B100, we started with Staten Island Parks back in 2005. And now we're going to try and do B50, but formally through this whole regulatory process. We're also looking at Optimus and seeing if we can try and do what Washington, D.C. has done. We are using bio tires. So in the video, we were beginning that process, but now we're well into it. We buy biodiesel, the Goodyear tires, as a regular tire all over the city. When I produced this newsletter, which is almost a year ago, we were at 1,000 tires, but we're buying tires all the time. So it's now really just part of what we do. And most agencies are buying some of the tires as part of their replacement program on a regular basis. That has worked out for us. We are going to try and do this longitudinal study to try and see if we get better wear on them and what the cost effectiveness is, and how they're working. So that takes a little while to do, but we are actually going to work on that. I mentioned the BioHeat initiative, but we continue to just keep using BioHeat, expanding the blend. Now we're trying to get the whole fleet into the whole building stock into B10. And we think we'll be close this year. I won't know for sure till the end of June when we report out. But we're making a lot of progress. And then I think the next stage is we will start to look at B20. So we're ahead of the game on B5. We're ahead of the game on B10. And I have every intention of being ahead of the law, which I think is 2035 in B20. Possibly as soon as next year. We'll have to see how that goes. When I was at Parks, we used B20 in heating oil for 3 consecutive years for all buildings. So we know it can be done. There's also a push, I mentioned it last time, and still developing, but there's also a look at how we might use higher blends of BioHeat or renewable diesel in our schools program. So the schools is by far, as you can see, the biggest heating oil customer that we have. It's a big, it's obviously all the school buildings and critical and sensitive buildings for us. So we are definitely looking at how we might expand both biodiesel. So there's a B50 thread that we're looking at. There's a renewable diesel thread we're looking at. But definitely a lot of interest to see if we couldn't go further in especially the school side. And that is, I think it's about half our heating oil. So a lot of work being done that by the Department of Ed, and obviously if they reach out, please take their calls, because they are trying to figure out how to get this done through our world of regulation that we have to work through, and in recognition that some of the building systems and heating oil systems that we're working with are older. And that is one of the concerns that they have, is what happens when you take a cleaner, a thinner fuel and put it in these older systems. Of course, the other big thing we're working on it right now, and it takes a little while, but we are in the midst of it, is to bid a renewable diesel contract. So I think Paul mentioned that most renewable diesel is currently sold in California. We want to change that. We used a little less than 1 million gallons 2 years ago. Successful at the fleet side, no problems, no issues of any type. We published a report, which we were required to do. We are now in the bidding process. We have issued a negotiated acquisition, which is a particular type of procurement under our policy board rules. This could conceivably be the largest negotiated acquisition the city's ever done. So it's taking some time. But the idea would be just as we have biodiesel as a requirement contract, a available to everybody at any time, a long-term contract, is to have renewable diesel as a long-term requirement contract. So we can procure renewable diesel for whenever and whatever we want. There may be some restrictions in what the vendor actually supplies, but that's the idea. So we're in that process now, and hopefully we'll have more to report on that as the year goes forward. This is just a screenshot of procurement. I'm not allowed to talk about procurements while we are in the midst of them, but I can say we're in the midst of them. Of course, we continue to support the biodiesel industry, and we want to see biodiesel and renewable diesel as a viable alternative to fossil fuels, at the same time as we push electrification and hybrid fuels. And one of the things that we're doing, and the reason California is the location of most renewable diesel sales, is because they have a low carbon fuel standard, and they are incentivizing renewable diesel in a way that New York is not. So we have bought on to the Clean Fuels New York Coalition that is helping to create or push for a low carbon fuel standard in New York State. We think this would be essential to bringing renewable diesel and more biofuels and more electrification, frankly, to New York State, and also to securing our long-term ability to use renewable diesel, right? So if renewable diesel is extraordinarily expensive, it's going to have an impact, right? We're going to be arguing this case now with a new administration. We don't know who it'll be, but we know it'll be new in January, right? So if I can argue that renewable diesel and regular diesel are more or less the same cost, and it's just a really interesting, great fuel, that's a lot better argument than, well, we got to pay a lot more for this because there's no other market but us. And that's where we are right now. So we really want to see a low carbon fuel standard develop. We think it will help make New York a leader in renewable diesel, and it'll help make this a long-term option for us, right? We're trying to do it and self-fund it. That was a lot easier pre-COVID. We had a plan for that. Post-COVID, we're in a financial mess too. So it's a little more interesting how that'll play out. But long-term, we want to get cost parity. That's where you can see it explode. That's where, if we can get to cost parity, that's when we're going to be talking about using renewable diesel for all our heating oil and all our vehicles, period. And I'd like to see us get to there sooner rather than later. But we are supporting this effort, so please be helpful wherever you can, and we'd love to see this develop like California has done. I already mentioned it, but of course, electric biofuels efficiencies going together. It's our Parks new hybrid garbage truck. We just brought these in that kind of screams out hybrid electric and screams out biodiesel. We promote them both on the same truck. And that's how we are approaching this whole effort. It also has a really nice truck side guard, if you've never seen a side guard. If you go to Europe, those are standard. That side guard, those railings, every truck in Europe has had those for 20 years. And it's been to make sure a child, a bicyclist, a small car, motorcyclist can't get killed under the back wheel, which we know to be about 8% of fatalities. No one in America had ever seen those since until New York working with the federal government, Cambridge, Boston, a number of other cities have been pushing this. So hopefully you'll see more of those truck sidecars. Last time I talked to you in December, I gave you an update on the COVID-19 work that we had been doing. Obviously, COVID-19 has been all of our complete reality for well over a year now. And I'm not going to repeat all of that. I'm just going to get to the last one, which is the most recent from last week, the most hopeful, which is now our staff are out working at vaccination sites. But that's a lot more hopeful aspect. And we have a number of our staff now working full-time to help deliver the vaccines. And given all the different roles that we've played, this is certainly the most helpful. My kids are on their summer break, on their rather spring break, but are going back to school next week. I don't know if they're happy about that. They've of course been in school virtually, but they'll go back physically. We all are going back to work, if you have seen this in the newspaper, in May. So I will no longer have my Kermit behind me in my background. I'll have to go back to my office, but that's a good thing. And so hopefully we can get to the other side of this kind of whole national event. And I just want to leave you, when this started back in March and April, it was in New York. And you all kind of reached out and helped support the fire department and kind of took an interest in what was happening in New York. Of course, it all became a national event, right? And then all of us have gone through the same thing. But we do appreciate that the National Biodiesel Board had reached out at first and partnered with us. And we all ended up in the same boat. And hopefully soon we will all disembark this boat together and get on to our regular lives, including hopefully I can host one of these meetings in person again. So with that, I just want to thank you again. Good to see you all, and if there are any questions, happy to answer them.
Thank you, Keith, very much. Thanks for ending on a hopeful note there. Does anybody have any questions for Keith at this point? But, hey, Keith, you have a goal of 2040 to be all electric. That's a goal. I know we talk about this a lot. So where do you think that leaves us?
Well, I mean, I've told you, first off, 2040 is 19 years from now, and we are pursuing it. We're aggressively pursuing electrification. We think electrification is a great thing. But that leaves, first off, 20 years of fuel use. We also have 5,000 off-road pieces. We have the whole heating oil building stock. And so I think the opportunity is tremendous for you to grow what you're doing. The reality is, and I actually believe this to be true, even with electrification and hybrid pursuits and efficiency, there's more opportunity. This is, I'm a civil servant, so I get to say this. I think there's more opportunity to grow the biodiesel and renewable diesel industry than you could handle it if it happened. Right? Forget about electrification in 2040. Why don't you get 10% of diesel like ethanol did in 2021 and see if you could fill a demand, right? And you think about your market opportunities, especially with a turnkey type fuel like renewable diesel, you could grow to no end. And again, short term, right? Your opportunity in New York City is 50+ million gallons. That's your short-term opportunity, heating oil and biofuels, right? So maybe that restricts, and we do about what, 2.5, 3 million D100 equivalents now. So your growth opportunity in New York City is extraordinary, short-term. And then look, yeah, we're going to move to electrification, but then there's ferries, then there's ferries out there, there's emergency systems out there. There's all kinds of other pursuits. So I wouldn't, and of course, it's a huge ambition to go to all electrification by 2040. I can't tell you publicly we're not doing it because we're trying to do it. And we are going to make a lot of progress. We might actually shock you at how quickly some of it happens. Some of it will be very hard, right? Fire engines, fire trucks, specialized apparatus, snow melters. Some of it's going to be very, very challenging. Some others will happen very quickly and be exciting on our side. But I think the opportunity for you is enormous. Renewable diesel offers you a pathway, a 2-decade pathway to grow tremendously short term. And then, down the road, America has so much diesel infrastructure. It is enormous. It is the singular fuel that we use, right? That isn't all going away in any, I wish it were, sometimes I wish it were, but it's not. So you have an enormous opportunity. And frankly, I would look at your situation as a growth-oriented situation, because it is. And I would not, and I hope you don't, because it will have impact on me eventually. I'm a civil servant. I can only do what I can do. I hope that, like I said earlier to begin, that sustainable alternatives, biofuels, efficiencies, and electrics fight forward together, as opposed to splinter apart. Because I do not think that that will be, certainly a place like New York, if it becomes loggerheads, New York will choose one direction, whether right or wrong. And so we push to push all these approaches together. That is how we want to go, and that's where we think everyone grows, right? We have the capacity. The only group that we would like to see reduce is fossil fuel. We want to see electrification grow, hybrids grow, and biofuels grow. And for the future, and I mean years and years and years, that's what I'm working on.
Okay, thank you, Keith. We totally agree with you. We don't see it in either or as well. We have we agree there's tremendous growth opportunity for biodiesel and renewable diesel, which we do represent both. So, and we thank you so much for what you're doing in New York City. And just one more thing, now it's your official job, part of your job, to go out and educate the rest of the country about biodiesel, renewable fuels. So, well, you've been doing that for us for many, many years. So that is so neat that now it's officially codified in your job description. So thank you for that.
And electrification and hybrids, the whole gamut, but so it's not exclusive. But that's my speech. I promise you, what I just told you is what I'm going to tell everybody else. I've probably done 20 different Zooms across the country in the last couple of months, and what I tell you is what I tell everyone. We push three threads, and we push them hard, and we push them together.
Okay.
Hey, Tom.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Tom, can I steal 2 minutes while Keith is still on the line? Keith, good to see you. Thanks for being with us. You were talking about the California low carbon fuel standard, and then where you are in New York and what's going on in your hopes there about basically a New York LCFS. I think, what we saw in California, that LCFS has been in place for a dozen years already. It kind of got off to a slow start. I think it was also very focused on electrification. And so what they are seeing now is this last year, 45% of the credits that were generated in California for the low carbon fuel standard were generated by biomass-based diesel, which is biodiesel and renewable diesel. And so I think California is basically demonstrating that without something that we can do today, which is the added benefit of biodiesel and renewable diesel, where would California be if they went just down this one route of electrification? So, I applaud the way you're approaching this with kind of all of the above. And we know biodiesel and renewable diesel offers some great improvement opportunities for the air quality and emissions today. So thanks for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Donnell. And Donnell is our executive CEO of National Biodiesel Board. Again, thank you, Keith. Thank you, Jonathan. I know you're on. Jonathan's part of Keith's staff, so it's very important in getting this all done. So with that, I'll go to our next speaker, another great friend of ours in New York City, Rocco Lassetosa. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the New York State Energy Coalition, who represents the home heating oil industry in New York City and Long Island, the single biggest home heating oil market in the country, over 1 billion gallons. And I know Rocco and his group has been spearheading the effort to work with the city, to work with Keith, work with Councilman Gennaro to get bioheat, more bioheat as the standard for home heating oil systems in the country, in New York. So I'll turn it over to you, Rocco.
Thank you, Tom. Good morning, everyone. And Tom, thank you for the opportunity to present here today and to be with everyone. Just so you know, some may remember the name New York Oil Heating Association, which is what we were up until January 1st of 2020. We merged with the Oil Heat Institute of Long Island and became the New York State Energy Coalition. We still have the same mission, and that's to represent the interests of the home heating oil bioheat dealers in New York City's 5 boroughs and on Long Island. New York State is a very large market. It's a $4 billion industry here in New York State. We have 1.6 million households consuming 1 billion gallons of heating fuel a year, 753 retail businesses providing over 8,600 full-time jobs. So as you can see, it's a big footprint that we have here. What I want to talk today a little bit about is our current threats. We're at risk today of being legislated out of business. There are a lot of people that want to see fossil fuels gone. And actually, it may sound counterintuitive, but so do we. We want to do what we can to clean up the environment. We've been doing so for many years. We introduced biodiesel in 2012, and that was on the heels of bringing the sulfur content down to 5% from its previously high levels. So, we've been working steadily to improve our fuel. 2017, we've ramped up the blend to 5%, and many of my dealers are delivering more than 5% right now. And, I forgot to share my screen, so I'm just going to leave it the way it is now. Anyway, I'll talk through this just as easy as I can sharing the screen. So there's nothing that you haven't seen before. So the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act has goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by 2030, 85% by 2050, and be net zero by 2050. They want to have 70% of this electric generation from renewable energy sources by 2030 and 100% by 2040. So we could see where we stand right now. We have, electrification is a threat. And I understand that, there has to be a mix of a number of fuels, here, and that one fuel cannot do it all. But we know that what we are doing works. It's a drop-in solution that will definitely, help provide, continued use of biodiesel here in New York State. And we are actually right now in negotiations with the Assembly. New York State Senate has passed our biodiesel legislation by 63-0 back in January. And we are looking for a same-as bill in the Assembly. The issue that we came up against has been warranties, but we're at a point where we think we've solved that issue for them. So, we're committed to being net zero by 2050. Currently, the mandate here in New York is 5% right now. And as I said, many of my dealers are doing more than 5%. Some are delivering as high as 35%. And this region here, the downstate region, consumes 70% of that 1 billion gallons. So we're looking to go to higher blends. The 5% goes to 10% in 2025, and then it will go to 20% by 2034. The state legislation would ramp that up a lot sooner. So we're continuing to work toward that end. And we think that we're feeling very confident that we're going to get there. One thing we need more biodiesel. So if you can produce 6 billion gallons, we're happy to take it here in New York, and we know we can get it sold. So you make it, we'll sell it for you. You should be sure of that. So to survive and grow, our industry must transition to renewable liquid fuels to comply with government greenhouse gas mandates and reduce carbon emissions. We are demonstrating a firm commitment to contributing to climate change initiatives. More education. We're constantly looking to educate our dealers more about this, and also consumer education, which we do through our national association and the funds that they provide us, the National Oil Heat Research Alliance. So, we have a lot of efforts on that score. And what you'll see next is, if I don't have that slide, I'm sorry about that. We just finished a program called I'm a Net Zero Hero. And it was a big consumer outreach that hit all sorts of social media, talking about environmental benefits, reducing carbon footprint, American jobs, which renewability and sustainability, enhanced equipment efficiency and performance, bring a bridge to a net zero carbon emissions future, safety and dependability. That program is still running. We did all types of social media, Facebook, you name it, Instagram, and so on. We had bus cards running all across the city and Long Island, showing those net zero hero placards that were all over the internet. So I think, one second here, there it is. I'm sorry. So this is what that program looked like, and you may or may not have seen it. I think, Tom, you might be familiar with it. I know that Danelle, I think we reached out to you on this, Paul Nazaro, who's on the line as well. has seen this, and we continue to make efforts to bring this to the public, to let them know, what we are doing to complete to help them, in the effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and bring a better fuel to market. We're one of the few fuels that can continue to improve. You can't do it with propane, and you can't really do it with natural gas, but heating fuel being blended with biodiesel is the path to a net zero carbon emissions future. And Tom, again, I want to thank you for the opportunity here today. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Tom, you're on mute.
Rocco, this is Paul. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a couple of questions. Yeah. Thanks for sharing this with everybody. I'm a net zero hero is like one of several different executions we have right now. One industry, one choice is the alternative to this. I guess one of the questions I had coming out of Keith's comments about the city's drive to electrification by 2040, whatever date that might be. Unlike the residential heating oil market, what's the vibes you're getting from fuel dealers that talk to their customers and share with them the fact that to retrofit their home into heat pumps, for example, could be somewhere in the $20,000 to $25,000 basis versus staying with the low carbon liquid fuel option like bioheat? What kind of feedback are these dealers getting?
Well, that's a good question. And it's funny because 2 weeks ago, there was an article in Newsday here, one of the local papers on Long Island, about a homeowner who decided that he was going to, install a heat pump. He spent $27,000. And then all of a sudden, during the winter, he gets a surprise bill for $3,700 for his electric. He never notified his utility, and they finally caught up to it, and they sent him a bill because he was on what was called balance billing. He was paying like $179 a month, and all of a sudden he gets hit in the head with $3,700. So that being said, it didn't take him long to switch back to his heating fuel system because he kept it in. I know we have to do a better job at educating dealers. I know a lot of dealers are out there talking to their customers about the downside of doing this and what they're facing, because the payback is just not there. But we have to do a better job with educating our dealers, because if this customer's dealer was more educated on this, he probably could have prevented this from happening. This customer spending $27,000 on a payback that he's never going to get.
All right, good question. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Rocco. Hey, Rocco, could you introduce our next speaker, a long time, one of our very first supporters in New York City?
Certainly will. Next up is Councilman Jim Gennaro. Jim, as Tom said, is a longtime friend of this industry, and I'm happy to be able to work with him again. And on that note, I won't belabor it. Jim, the floor is all yours, Councilman. You're on mute, Councilman. You have to take it off mute.
Okay.
There you go. There you go.
Thank you, Rocco. I thank you to all the members of the Biodiesel Board. And yeah, I'm back. Imagine that at my age. Shame on me. I didn't prepare anything. I really wanted to kind of listen to what was going on. I left the council in 2013. I was term limited. I went to work with Governor Cuomo. Oh my God, to even mention that name, oh please. And I did that until 2020. And then I became a widower. And then 5 years later, 6 months ago, I got married. And so here I am back in the council. I have a lot of catching up that I have to do. I'm depending upon Rocco and your good industry and my successor, Costa Constantinidis. We're looking at a situation that I'm going to be chair of the Committee on Environmental Protection a lot sooner than people think. This is not public information, but this is happening very, very soon. And so now between now and June, well, you should know that I'm back on the council because my successor left the council and it created a vacancy in the council. I thought I was just looking at a June primary, and then I had to deal with a February 2nd special election in which I won more than 60% of the vote in an 8-way race. So I appear to still be popular. But I want to be popular with your industry. I want to be popular with the environment. I want to be popular with reality. I want to be popular with my good colleagues in government and move the ball forward, along lines of excellence. I've done it before. I think I can do it again. I wish I had more specificity as to what my agenda is going to be, but my agenda right now, I got to be honest, is to get elected once again in the June 22nd Democratic primary. The campaign never ends. So I had a February 2nd special election followed by a June primary election. And then I have the, November election. So it's, I got married 6 months ago. I said hello to my wife, and then I really haven't seen her since, because I've been, I'm kidding. We live together now, but it's just been very difficult. And so I come here today with more of a more of a pledge than a program. There's a lot that I've missed in the last 7 years working for the Cohen administration and being at DEC, where I wasn't working on these issues. Becoming a widower and sort of climbing out of that and getting me and my family sort of past that. And here I am, the kids are out of the house. I got a new wife, everything is good. I'm elected. I'm going to have the gavel very soon as chair of the Environmental Protection Committee. And, I'm counting on all of you to educate me on how I can move the ball downfield along lines of excellence. Now and then, I'll have my own things to say. Back when we all got together in 2012, 2011, 2000, whatever it was, when there was the whole, this is like the dark ages now, going back to the whole, food versus fuel and what is sustainable and, blah, blah, blah. And we moved all way past that. And that was something I thought was very important, to do. And it was, embraced by your industry, and, the rest is history. So, I'm here, I'm back, I'm kind of distracted now, building my staff and working with my campaign team. I have a lot of, because, even though I am a, progressive when it comes to environmental issues, I'm a moderate, I'm a centrist, I'm the kind of creature that sometimes doesn't do very well in Democratic primaries in New York City. Kavish. So I got a lot of work to do between, now and then. I'm not asking for support. I'll be fine. I want to support you. So once I'm in and once I'm fully up to speed and once there's a, whole sustainability agenda that I want to move forward, I want your industry woven very much into the tapestry of what I am doing, and how I can be of help to your wonderful industry that has done, so much for so many. And I was almost reluctant to come on today because what am I going to say? I've been doing other things for 7 years, and but I thought it was important to come on to make that pledge. I think people in this room trust me. They see what I've done before. They see my commitment. They see my ability to take strong stands and stand up for industries that I believe in, and to make good things happen. And so that's who I am. That's what I do. I think people know that I'm good at that. Your industry talks a lot about feedstock. I need feedstock from you all so that I can do what I need to do to advance your industry to make, an even brighter future. Yes, we know about electrification. We know about net zero and all that. But there is so much that, we can do in order to have everyone get the benefits of, biodiesel and bioheat and these fuels are going to be around until after I'm gone. So let's make the best of it. Let's do good things together. Now, I'm sure this sounds to many people like some vapid politician kind of speech, but that's all I really got. But I think my pledge is good. My word is good. I'll always work with you folks, and let's do good things together. Was that good? Is that okay?
Perfect.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, you bet.
Well,
Well, if
well,
anybody
thank,
has any, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to. I don't really have any answers, but I'm really, I'd be happy to have questions even about, you got married in the middle of a pandemic, how did that work? Anything, we did it via Zoom. I mean, my wife and I were together, but the guests were, we didn't have any guests, so it was just. Because I knew that I was looking at a June 2nd primary, and so we were supposed to get married in April, and then COVID said no, then it was going to be July, and COVID said no. And finally I said, honey, I got a primary on, June 2nd. I got to get going. It's already September. Like, we got to get this done. And 10 days after we got married, then I heard that there was going to be a vacancy, and it was going to be a special election in February versus a primary, and well, the primary was going to happen anyway. So we really had to scramble the jets, and I summoned all of the can-do wherewithal that I learned from the people in the biodiesel industry and figured out how to get elected on February 2nd, which was Groundhog Day.
Hey, Councilman, as on behalf of the National Biodiesel Board, I'm the CEO of the National Biodiesel Board. Thank you so much for your past support. You've been wonderful in helping to lead New York City exactly where to help them get to where they are today and to continue to lead. And we thank you so much for that, and appreciate you being here today with us as well. And we'll continue to work with you. And
Thank you for inviting me, Rocco. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
God bless. Take care.
Thanks. Be well.
well, thank you very much, Councilman Gennaro. Our next speaker is Tim Keaveney, VP of Sales for Hero BX, Senior and Business Development. Tim's another longtime friend and has been a lot to develop the industry. He represents Hero BX, the largest biodiesel producer in the Northeast, and supplies a lot of the local product there. He's going to talk to you about the process of making biodiesel. Take it away, Tim. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everybody, for joining the meeting today. I want to make sure that I introduce my colleagues who are on the line, Kim Feitner and Sean Trisket, who have worked alongside me for a long time in our sales division. And those folks are the people responsible by and large for taking our fuels from our plant and selling them out to the markets, particularly being a Pennsylvania-based company into the New York metropolitan area. Also want to thank those who traveled via Zoom all the way from Washington, D.C., the legislative staff, the senators, and Congress folks. Thank you for being here. And thank you for the rest of us who are dedicated to this great fuel. Today, I'm just going to do my best to describe what we do and actually how we produce biodiesel. And then like anything, nothing's for free. At the end, I'm naturally going to ask the legislators, staff that are in the room, a few things that are on the minds of biodiesel producers and distributors of this fuel relative to policy. So why don't I just jump right into it? I have a handful of slides, and I'll do my best here to share my screen. Give me a moment, please. I'm almost there. How's that look? You see me?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. So just give me 1 minute. I want to. All right, good. Hero BX. A little bit about our company history. We're headquartered in Erie, Pennsylvania, so Western Pennsylvania. We were founded back in September of 2005, where we put several tens of millions of dollars into the infrastructure to build a first-class biodiesel large-scale plant in the city of Erie. We produced our first ASTM D6751 certified gallon of biodiesel in 2007. And since then, we've been making biodiesel and distributing it by and large through the Eastern Corridor, from Maine to Florida, and as far west as Ohio from our flagship plant in Erie. We employ about 190 folks. That includes our staff in-house, as well as all the plant staff. We do have 5 facilities in the United States that I'll talk about in a minute. And we're very dedicated to making great biodiesel and distributing it throughout the nation. So like I was saying, we have 5 facilities in the United States. We produce and distribute biodiesel. Our flagship plant is in Erie, Pennsylvania. That's where we're headquartered, and that's where our first plant was built. We can make about 50 million gallons out of that plant, so neighboring state to New York City, and we're making fuels there today and distributing throughout New York, including into the metropolitan area. We also, in 2015, purchased a plant down in Mountainville, Alabama, which is close to Tuscaloosa in that area. So we're supplying about 20 million gallons in Tuscaloosa to, by and large, the Southeast United States. In 2018, we went into an agreement, a toll agreement, we call a contract agreement with a company called Iowa Renewable Energy in Washington, Iowa. And that's a facility that we're making approximately 20 to 30 million gallons of biodiesel today. And that feeds most of the Midwest states, Illinois, Missouri, Minnesota, and some of that material actually goes as far west as California. We also have another facility in Clinton, Iowa, with a capacity of 10 million gallons, which is serving the Midwest. And we're in the process of building a facility, a brand new 15 million gallon facility in South Roxana, Illinois, which is just a little bit east of St. Louis, Missouri. And lastly, we are also in the bioheat business. We talked a lot about bioheat already, especially with Rocco's presentation. And right now we're taking biodiesel from our Erie plant and bringing it into a facility in Northampton, New Hampshire, which is the eastern coast of New Hampshire. And we're distributing blends of B20 bioheat to citizens across southern New Hampshire and northern Massachusetts and parts of southern Maine from that facility. So we're fully engrossed in biodiesel, and we've been at it for a long time, and we think we're pretty good at it. So what I want to do now is talk a little bit about our plant, specifically in Erie, and then get into the process of how we make this material. So back in 2005, when we put the plant together, we contracted with a very well-known engineering company out of Italy called Desmet Balestra. Desmet Balestra is a technological company with over 50 biodiesel plants globally. So the technology is proven and well established. This particular facility that you're looking at a photograph at, it sits right on Lake Erie. You can see the lake in the background. And this facility was formerly a large paper mill plant. So what happened is our owner, Mr. Samuel Pat Black, purchased the property back in 2005 and revamped the property to build this 100 million gallon first-class plant. This plant is interesting. We call it a multi-feedstock plant, meaning that we run multiple feedstocks or multiple raw materials are run through the plant in order to make biodiesel. So that could mean first generation vegetable oils like soybean oil and canola, corn oil. And we also run quite a bit of animal fats, poultry grease, and as well as choice white grease from the pork business. And we also run a lot of used cooking oil. Again, it's a unique facility in that it's multi-feedstock. So one might say, how do you make biodiesel? Well, you know, with everything we make, including you know, a cake for that matter, you need a recipe, right? The recipe for biodiesel is actually, it's a pretty simple recipe. But the challenge is making it properly, making it right. And we need the technology that's in our plant to make that happen. Simply put, the feedstocks that we use are also known as triglycerides. So they include those feedstocks I mentioned, like used cooking oil and animal fats and vegetable oils. We also use methanol. Methanol plays a critical role in the production of biodiesel. Biodiesel is generally made when fats and oils are chemically reacted with this part methanol. And a catalyst, we use sodium methylate as a catalyst, and it produces a methyl ester or biodiesel. You know, effectively, we put it in one side of a vessel, a reaction occurs at 145 degrees, and out on the other end, the result is biodiesel and a byproduct called glycerin. And we'll get into that a little bit later in the presentation. The first thing we have to do when you're producing biodiesel is bring in those raw materials, bring in feedstocks. And to make 50 million gallons a year, you need lots of tanks for feedstocks on the way in and lots of tanks for finished fuels on the way out. So we have 3 tanks or close to 3 million gallons of total capacity for feedstocks that come into our facility. And the reason we have 3 tanks is it enables us to segregate different feedstocks. For example, if it makes sense for us to run lots of used cooking oil, either for you know, carbon reduction customers that are looking to reduce carbon or economic reasons, we can bring in a particular feedstock, store it in a large tank alongside other feedstocks. So we have flexibility with lots of storage, and that's necessary in a large scale plant. So once the feedstock comes in, you need to treat it. You need, you know, feedstock, you can't just take raw materials, introduce a catalyst to make biodiesel. It's not that easy. Naturally, a process has to happen. And one of the biggest parts of the process, in the first process of making biodiesel, is cleaning up those feedstocks, making them, putting them in a state where they can react. So the process, the biodiesel actually needs to go through 4 processes to improve the quality or remove these impurities. And the impurities are primarily metals: calcium, magnesium, sodium, phosphorus, potassium. Those are all bad actors and nasty stuff inside the feedstocks. We need to get rid of them. We need to remove them. And once we do, those pre-treated triglycerides that are left over, they can be converted into biodiesel. So the first step in that process is really just washing. What we do is we bring the feedstock in, it's heated, and it's pumped from those mixing tanks that I described into what we call the pre-treatment process. We heat it, we add citric acid, sometimes caustic, to take those metals and make them hydratable so they can be removed with water. So again, we're just talking about cleaning up the feedstock. Then the next stage, after they go through the first process of cleaning, we send them to a centrifuge. So after the chemicals in the water are mixed into the feedstock, the products run through this centrifuge where it spins rapidly at a rate of 4,200 RPM, so very quickly. And let's call it the good oil or the triglycerides, separate from the water and the chemicals that washed it within the centrifuge. And they separate and they're removed. So on the way in to the centrifuge, the oil contains somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 4% water. But on the way out, after they're spun out, the oil contains less than 0.5%. So that centrifuge is a key component in the process. It's a very expensive piece of equipment. In fact, we've learned over the years that we better keep spare parts on the shelf for the centrifuge, because when it goes down, and if it goes down, and it has gone down, we're out of business. It's not a good day if our centrifuge fails. So we've been caught in that situation, and in 15 or 20 years making biodiesel, you learn what you need to keep on the shelf to keep you moving. So there's plenty of spare centrifuge parts on the shelf within our plant. So we clean it up with the centrifuge, and then we send it off again to continue the process of cleaning. The next stage, it goes into these pre-treatment filtering system. So you have the oil is, with each step, getting a little bit cleaner. So that washed oil I was describing is sent to a filter A tank where diatomaceous earth, or DE we call it, it's added. DE is like a clay type material. And it serves as a really tight filtering agent that traps these impurities as they pass through the centrifuge. So the mixture of oil and the DE passes through leaf filters, which you can see in this photograph. And it pulls any remaining contaminants out along with it. Then the oil is heated, dried, and then pumped into a vacuum tank to remove any remaining water. Then it's all dried out, and he's sent to a buffer tank, or really kind of a sort of a settling tank, where eventually that settled oil goes into the free fatty acid removal stage, which I'll talk about right now. So once you get the oil in the state where it's cleaned and all the water and chemicals are removed, that oil or triglycerides, as we call them, it still contains free fatty acids, which are inherent in the feedstocks we use. And what this apparatus is, we call it the fatty acid stripper. And it's a very important and unique apparatus in our Erie plant. It's a distillation column is what it is. So it removes free fatty acids from that purified feedstock I was describing, and removing the FFA from the triglycerides. It's a really critical step in the production of biodiesel. Well, why is it critical? We use a basic catalyst to cause a reaction to make biodiesel, which is sodium methylate. And in the transesterification process, that catalyst will neutralize if existing FFAs are present. And if that happens, you're making soaps and salts, and that's bad for biodiesel. That's terrible. It leads to poor quality finished fuels. So the point of the story is this apparatus helps us remove those FFAs. We must remove them in the fatty acid stripper in order to make great biodiesel. So after that happens, what happens is the oil is washed and dried and heated under 500 degree pressure under vacuum distillation, in the vacuum distillation column. And those FFAs that I described, they actually turned into a gas, and they're removed from the triglycerides. They're pulled out and they're recondensed, and we collect them, we reclaim them, and we actually sell them. They're a byproduct of the process. Most of those FFAs actually go into the animal feed industry. So they are renewable, I guess you could say. The remaining oil in the distillation column now is almost 100% washed. With the minimal triglycerides or FFAs, which in the triglycerides. And then we pump that material into what we call, at least I call, the magic room. The magic room is where transesterification occurs, where biodiesel happens. And this is a photograph of one of our reactors. And so what happens is the transesterification process takes that clean feedstock inside one of these reactors, and we add methanol and the catalyst I described, sodium methylate, and we heat it to 145 degrees, and a chemical reaction occurs. It converts those triglycerides into methyl esters, a biodiesel. The reaction takes about an hour. We have 3 of these. This particular picture you're looking at, the reactor is 5,400 gallons. We have 3 of them, and this is called a continuous flow biodiesel plant. So fuel is always moving through these reactors, as opposed to some biodiesel plants are batch plants, meaning they'll make one batch at a time, several thousand gallons at a time in a batch, and then move it out and do it again. This is what's called continuous flow. So we're always making biodiesel. And those reactors are sized to run at 700 pounds of feedstock per minute. And that translates into about 100 gallons a minute. So we make about 100 gallons a minute of biodiesel in this plant, or somewhere in the neighborhood of 140 to 150,000 gallons each day. Yeah, and this drawing just illustrates what I was describing, the transesterification process as it relates to volume and output. So I think I started the beginning of the presentation with the recipe, 10 parts in, 1 part methanol and some catalyst in, reactions occurring in the vessel, and out the other end yields 10 parts biodiesel and 1 part glycerin. So that glycerin, like the FFAs I described earlier, are a byproduct of the process. And we take that glycerin and we sell that off to industry that uses it for all sorts of different products globally. So now we have biodiesel almost completed, but because we're so crazy about quality at Hero BX, we continue the washing process. We're not happy until our biodiesel comes out the other end, you know, like Paul Nazaro might say, like fine wine. Like it needs to be cleaned. So after it comes out of the TE, we continue the washing process. You know, once that's complete, the remaining glycerin is removed in another large decanter. That decanter helps us remove that glycerin before the centrifuge moves the remaining, so it goes through another centrifuge. And then we add citric and water to clean it up even further. And then the very last process in the process is we send it again through another filter or haze filter. What we do with that final biodiesel is we chill it down. We chill it to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and precipitates form in that phase as it cools down, or small tiny droplets that could cause filter plugging or downstream issues in a diesel or heating oil system. We chill it, it runs through these filters, catching all those precipitates, so it comes out in a state that's in spec and particularly carries great cold weather characteristics for the Northeast United States climate. And then it's sent back into storage and we test everything. And we're very proud of our quality at Hero BX. In all of our plants, unlike a lot of plants, we have in-house laboratory capabilities because quality is our #1 priority. Our in-house lab enables our company to control strict quality standards put forth by industry. You know, quality standards that have been worked on for 25 years. And the ASTM standard is almost perfected at this point. So we're testing everything in-house before it gets out into the field. One thing we're very proud of, and I want to applaud the National Biodiesel Board for, is the BQ 9000 program. Hero BX is a BQ 9000 certified producer. And what that means is BQ 9000 is it's a voluntary quality control program governed by the National Biodiesel Board that assures the public and industry participants that biodiesel that carries that BQ 9000 seal, as you see in the bottom left corner, is produced with very high and very strict quality standards. So we abide by that program, and it's done well by us for close to 20 years now. And voila, there's some finished biodiesel. That's what it looks like when it comes out the other end. This material actually was made last Wednesday. We were fortunate to get a picture of it as it came out of storage. So I have to believe that this biodiesel you're looking at is, maybe it's running around New York City in one of your vehicles. I would hope so, or it's keeping somebody's home warm, either in New England or in New York. But that's what it looks like on the way out. After it's finished, we bring it back into storage. We have 3 tanks on the finished side. Earlier I was talking about feedstock tanks on the way in. These are the feedstock tanks. I'm sorry, the biodiesel tanks on the way out. We have over 3 million gallons of storage. And these hold all the finished fuels, and they're ready for market. We ship these fuels primarily by railcar and truck. So this Erie facility has both the capability of loading a rail car, and you can see that in the upper photograph. Those rail cars are 25,000 gallons. It's not uncommon for us to load those and send them, right to North Jersey, one of the biggest hubs in the country for fuels. And they go there often. They go to upstate New York. They go to New England. They go all over the Eastern corridor. And then for business that we do, say within 200 miles of our plant in Western Pennsylvania, in this case, most of it is trucked. So large tanker trucks can come into our facility, load up biodiesel, and get off to cities like Buffalo, Albany, Syracuse, parts of just the general area of Western Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, and areas of Ohio, to make what we would call a local delivery. And then, so that's it as far as, that's kind of the whole process from beginning to end, making biodiesel. I spoke about this a little bit earlier. This is our facility in New Hampshire, where we're, back to Rocco's point, we're providing bioheat to citizens of Rockingham County, New Hampshire, Essex County, Massachusetts, and in southern Maine into York County, by providing heating oil. So in that big, large white tank on the right, that's filled with 150,000 gallons of heating oil. And there's a tank adjacent to it that's a bit in the shadow behind that little brown house. That's 40,000 gallons of B100 biodiesel storage. So we take product from Erie, we send it to New Hampshire, we blend it with 80% of heating oil, and we provide bioheat to a client like, you see the truck there, a client like Petro, a large distributor, not only in metropolitan New York, but through New England, that will come in, buy bioheat from us, and distribute it to homeowners. So it's really a turnkey bioheat solution. We distribute this product exclusively through oil heat dealers in the region, and they're delivering low carbon heating fuel to consumers throughout the region. So we think, although it's a small part of the grand scale of what we do, We think it's a pretty neat solution for fuel oil dealers who are already in the game and want to be in the bioheat game. And we try to make it super easy for them where they can pull up and drive away with bioheat. And it's been a great success in the region. So I said it from the beginning, our legislative staff friends, nothing's for free, right? Naturally, biodiesel is very policy driven, and we ask and we need the help of your bosses to, advance biodiesel forward. And I just wanted to kind of touch on a few quick things that are on the plate of producers like us in the United States and the whole industry as a whole relative to policy. I first want to just quickly start with the EPA. We live and die by EPA's decisions. I'm sure most of you know that, particularly relative to the Renewable Fuel Standard. But one thing that's really been a thorn in our side over the last few years is the small refinery exemptions that have been granted to several major oil companies nationwide. Those refinery exemptions have cut close to 600 million gallons of biodiesel from the Renewable Fuel Standard. And right now, there are 30 more being considered for 2019 and 20 that will erase another 270 odd million gallons from biodiesel producers like us. We say that every gallon that's given to a small in a small refinery exemption is literally a gallon taken out of our plants. So what we ask that you ask your bosses to simply consider that, and also relative to the EPA is DRFS volumes. Again, we live and die by EPA's decisions, and effectively EPA has flatlined biodiesel at 2.43 billion gallons for 20 and 21. That's actually lower than the industry capacity. Our industry capacity nationwide is over 3 billion gallons. We've proven and we've done that in the past, and we can hit that without a problem. So, flatlining us stings a little bit. So increased RFS volumes is something I'm hoping you can bring home. And then the other thing is the announcement of the RVOs. It's historically EPA has been late on sending the RVO message, and here we are waiting for the 2021 volumes to be released again. They're late again, and what happens with that? That creates tremendous uncertainty in our market. We are driven by at least our clients, our customers, who are by and large the oil companies in municipalities like New York City. They're driven by what EPA is telling them, and it affects RIN prices. It affects feedstock, particularly feedstock prices, and availability and supply. So we ask that please, anything you can bring back home relative to the RFS and volumes will be greatly appreciated. And then lastly, the tax credit. We want to thank you for helping to extend the dollar biodiesel tax credit through 2022. It's really been a situation where biodiesel producers needed and waited a long time for. So we have some clarity on that through 2022, but beyond 2022, we're going to be knocking on your door again, asking for help. We know that Congressman Mike Thompson, chair of the Taxation Subcommittee of Ways and Means, introduced the Green Act earlier this year. That bill includes dozens of clean energy provisions, including we'd call it a step down, 3-year step down of the blender's credit, 23 through 25. So those are the things that bill, for example, could help us. Would like you to consider that. So I guess that's what I'd say. We don't want a crash landing. Suddenly we get to the end of 22 and there's no tax credit. That would be a crash landing. Something like a step down would be more of a soft landing, so to speak. So that's it. I could go on all day, but I won't. I want to thank you for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions relative to biodiesel. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
Great overview, great outlining the process and the importance of federal policy and driving our industry forward. Paul, do you want to take us out, please?
All right, thanks, Tom. And I want to thank all of the participants for today. I know we're a little over time, so we will follow up with congressional staffers to answer any questions they may have. We want to keep the conversation going throughout the year. And toward that end, we will offer additional tours. Hopefully, we will have some in-person tours later in the year, because I know that seeing these processes firsthand, seeing the fleets that use them firsthand, and having a day-long trip to discuss all of the issues is far more attractive and far more attractive opportunity than the Zoom call maybe. So with that, I think we will stop here, and I know we're over time and I see people are already having to skip off to other meetings. So we will close out this session and be happy to follow up and answer any additional questions with everyone later on. So thank you to Keith Kerman. Thank you to Councilman Gennaro. And thank you to Rocco Lassetosa and Rocco Lassetosa and Tim Keaveney with Hero BX for sharing the process. Again, we hope to get back to in-person meetings very, very soon.
All right. Thank you, Paul, and thank you everybody for joining us
Thanks for
today.
the opportunity.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Care.
Nice job, Paul. Nice job, Tom.
Welcome to Renewable Energy Group, North America's largest biodiesel producer and a leading producer of renewable diesel. REG has spent over 2 decades innovating and continuously improving the production of cleaner burning, lower carbon renewable fuel. This video will give you a look at that process and show you how biodiesel is made. REG employs more than 800 individuals that work in a wide range of roles, from sales and accounting to loaders and plant maintenance. No matter the location or the position, safety is one of our top priorities. REG has 11 biodiesel refineries and 1 renewable diesel facility located throughout the United States and Germany. In 2019, the REG fleet produced 495 million gallons of renewable fuels. These biorefineries convert fats, oils, and greases into cleaner burning, lower carbon biodiesel, a cleaner alternative to petroleum diesel. REG's headquarters, located in Ames, Iowa, is where the North American business operations take place. Here, the purchase of feedstock, selling of REG products, transportation coordination, and customer services and other operations are managed. The biodiesel production process begins with fats, oils, and greases, also known as feedstocks. Feedstocks include used cooking oil, distiller's corn oil left over from the ethanol production process, animal fats, soybean oil, a byproduct of the soybean crush process, and other vegetable oils. The production process starts when a truck, rail car, or water vessel arrives at the plant and offloads hundreds to thousands of pounds of feedstock. Trucks are the most common way feedstock arrives. The feedstock is immediately sent to a storage tank. While there, the team in the plant's lab will take a sample and run specific tests to make sure it doesn't have any unwanted chemicals or contaminants. Once the feedstock starts moving toward the production process, it has to be pre-treated to remove any unwanted water or materials that could create issues during production or cause damage to equipment. As with all of the aspects of the process, this is executed with safety at top of mind. After the feedstock has been pre-treated, it is put in a tank and mixed with methanol and chemicals known as catalyst. These three elements spun together create a chemical reaction known as transesterification. This results in the methanol replacing the glycerin in the fat molecule, creating a methyl ester, the chemical name for biodiesel. The glycerin left over from the process is siphoned off and later sold as a co-product, while the biodiesel moves to the next part of the process. After some additional purification, the biodiesel is ready to be sent out to customers. However, some REG biorefineries send it through a distillation column that gives the biodiesel one more cleanup and gives it a clearer finish. Biodiesel operators in a central control room monitor the whole process. They use special software to control most of the systems and ensure everything is done safely and correctly. The lab team is also taking samples throughout to make sure that the biodiesel maintains its quality throughout the process. All REG biodiesel goes through a strict quality check before sending out to customers. The REG 9000 branded fuel goes beyond industry quality standards to make sure that the biodiesel REG produces meets or exceeds customers' needs. Now that the biodiesel has been made and is being stored back in the plant's tank farm, it is tested one more time to ensure its quality. Once it passes final quality testing, it is loaded into a truck, rail car, or barge to be sent to the customer. The glycerin that was separated from the biodiesel earlier is also sold to customers for a wide range of uses. That means that the only byproduct left over from the process is wastewater. That water is sent back to a water treatment facility to be purified. All REG biorefineries are continuous flow, meaning this process is happening non-stop with feedstock, always going in and biodiesel going out. The process at REG is continuously improving. The REG team is innovating in ways to make facilities safer, more efficient, and more sustainable. By getting more out of the process, REG lowers its fuel's carbon intensity score, making it more appealing to customers. A combination of technology and collaboration across all of REG makes this possible. REG has biorefineries and biodiesel terminals all across the US and Europe, which creates a robust distribution system that allows REG to deliver fuel to customers where and when they need it. All of these things contribute to REG being the leading biodiesel producer in North America and providing customers with the highest quality product on the market.